Hey everybody, it's Delta Shiny Zeta here, and today we are going to learn how to play the 2 to 6 player game by Unstable Games known as Here to Slay. So like I just mentioned, it says 2 to 6 players, takes an average of 30 to 60 minutes, and recommended for ages 10 and up. So let's go and begin on how to play Here to Slay. So upon opening the box, you'll see a couple things. The very first thing you may actually end up seeing are going to be the game rules, which I'm basically going to be covering in this video, but in video version, not text reading version, so we can throw that away. Next up on the list is you'll see a bunch of different cards. So I will tell you that I actually go ahead and use card sleeves on my cards. So when I'm stacking cards together for the deck and everything, it may seem like I have a lot more cards than you, but that's not actually true. It's because I like to run card sleeves on all of my different cards, and as you can see, mine are going to be a lot bigger. So the very first thing I'm going to recommend that you go ahead and do is definitely greatly shuffle all the cards except the reference cards. So here are the reference cards. I went ahead and pulled them all out that were mixed up in there in the deck. There are 6 of them because once again the game is a 2 to 6 player game. These reference cards are not actually part of the game itself, but a reference, as the name suggests. So players are allowed to have one of these at all times with them if they would like to actually see a couple references. For example, it gives a reminder on how to win, it gives a reminder of the 6 different classes available, and on the other side it gives you a reminder on what you can do on your turn by these different bullet points, and then what costs how many action points. If that's confusing, that's okay, because that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in this video. If we keep looking at the contents in here, we'll actually see a couple of large cards. Now, the large cards are going to be divided into 2 different types of cards. You're going to see cards with a dark background, and you're going to see cards with a light background. Go ahead and separate those and lay those face down. The very last thing you will see on the box are going to be 2 dice. You want to go ahead and pull those out and also lay them on the table. And that's all the contents within the game. The next thing is that there's going to be 6 of these leader cards. I'll go ahead and flip them over, but there should be 6 of them. And the very last thing is that there should be 15 of these monster cards. These are the big black cards, and they're different monsters in the game. Now for the setup. Before we begin the setup, it's obviously important to know how many players are going to be playing the game. Because for these leader cards over here, each player can actually go ahead and choose 1 leader card. There's 6 of them in total, and there's a lot of different ways that you can go ahead and proceed with the order. For example, you can roll to see who gets, the higher number, and then you go in that order of who gets to choose their leader first. Or you can just do it randomly as well, however you want to, or if somebody wants to volunteer to go first, that's fine too. Once a player selects their leader card, they're going to go ahead and place it face up in front of them. Leader cards do vary a lot, and honestly, it really depends a lot of you knowing the game, so you can actually know strategically what you should be going for if you have a different game plan. Each different leader is actually composed of a different class. As it says in the reference card, there are a total of 6 different classes. There's the Fighter, Bard, Guardian, Ranger, Thief, and Wizard. And as you can see, each of these leaders is actually one of those classes. Aside from their class being different, each leader also has a passive ability that can be listed at the bottom. For example, this card says each time you roll a challenge, +2 to your roll. What's a challenge? I'll explain that later, of course. But each of these does something very different. I'll go ahead and quickly show each of these on screen one at a time if you want to pause the video or just see them all in general. I'm going to be demonstrating a 3-player game for this playthrough here. As a quick note, if you are playing a 2-player game, the Shadow Claw card is not allowed, which means you should be removing it from the game, and the 2 players would only get an option from these 5. If you're playing with 3 or more though, all 6 of them are actually available for you to select. So that's just a quick little heads up. For the 3-player demonstration, let's assume that this first player got the Fist of Reason, the second player got the Protecting Horn, and the third player got the Divine Arrow. They're going to be placing the card right in front of their play area. I'm a little confined in space here, but obviously if we were playing in an actual table, each person would have like maybe their own area designated and facing each other, kind of like that. But for the sake of this video, so I don't go ahead and do things upside down, I'm going to just place them all like this and just assume that each player is one of these different spots. After you do that, you can then go ahead and take away the remaining leader cards and just put them back in the box because you will not be using them for the entire game. Next up on the list, you'll want to go ahead and shuffle both the 115 small white cards and the 15 large black cards. So I'm going to go ahead and shuffle both of these. Once both decks are shuffled, you're going to want to deal 5 cards to each player. This is going to be their starting hand, which means you should deal them face down so that no other player is actually able to see the content of the cards that they actually have. Each player is allowed to look at their own cards pretty much immediately, so you can encourage them to do that. And the very last part for the setup is you're going to go ahead and flip 3 of these monster cards face up. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3. So these are going to be the 3. And you want to go ahead and leave both decks within easy reach of all players. I like to go ahead and put the monster cards on one side and the regular deck on the other side, and there's going to be a discard pile pretty much right here next to the regular deck as well. And all of that is the setup of the game. Now let's talk about how to actually play the game as well as how to win the game, so the end goal. So there's essentially 2 ways to win the game. The first is by slaying 3 monster cards. As a reminder, these are monster cards. I'll talk about how to slay them in just a little bit. The second way to win is if you end your turn with 6 different classes in your party. As a reminder, your leader is one of those 6 classes. So if you end your turn with 5 of the 5 other classes face up on your side of the field, then you actually go ahead and win the game at the end of your turn. Now if we flip it to the other side, it says what you can do on your turn. It's very wordy, so I'm not going to go ahead and show this here, but instead I'll talk about the different options. So I'm going to go ahead and do a sample hand from this first player. Let's assume that this player went first. So these are their 5 different cards. Among the deck you'll see various different types of cards. You'll have hero cards, which are designated by their different classes, such as these 2 right here. You also have item cards, such as this one. This one's a curse item. You have challenge cards. There's also magic cards available, such as this one that the second player has. And then last but not least, you have modifier cards, such as this one that the third player has. By the way, this player also has a great example of a regular item card. For items, they're both regular and curse item cards. Let's go back to the first player to demonstrate a turn. So every single player on every single one of the turns has 3 different action points that they can use. 3. There are certain actions that consume 1 action point, other actions that consume 2 action points, and there's even 1 action that consumes all 3 action points. Once you are out of action points, your turn basically immediately ends. Let's talk about the different actions that consume 1 action point. So every time you play a hero, you consume 1 action point. For example, looking at this player's hand, this player has 2 challenge cards, 1 item card, and then 2 hero cards. So I could actually play this Wise Shield hero card face up in my area. Once you play a hero face up in your area, what this means is that you now have that additional hero that works for winning the game. So now this player actually has 2 different classes, only needs 4 more to actually win the game. When you play a hero card, you get to use its role effect immediately. What is its role effect? Well, pretty simple. Its role effect is located at the very bottom of the card. And here, for example, it says +3 to all of your rolls until the end of your turn. Essentially, it is the hero's special ability. However, in order to actually activate that effect, you need to roll the number that it indicates here or higher. For example, this card says 6+. So when you play a hero card, you immediately get to use its roll for free, no additional cost. So let me go ahead and do a sample here. I'm going to get both dice, and then just roll them both. Alright, in case you can't see that because it's kind of small, this one here is a 6, and it'll always show you, of course, the underline, that's a 6, and then this one here is a 3. So I got a 9, which means I did actually meet the criteria of this. So what does this mean? This means that +3 to all of my rolls until the end of my turn. So, for any additional rolls I do this turn, I'm always going to be adding 3. So that right there was just 1 action point. I went ahead and played a hero card from my hand there, I did the roll, and I got it, and that was 1 action point. If you fail to get the roll of what the hero is indicating, for example, let's say I got a 5, it's okay, the effect doesn't work, but the hero card still stays face up on my side of the field. As a quick heads up, when you play hero cards, again, you play them face up on your field, but when you play magic cards, you simply read the effect out loud and then you put it in the discard pile face up over here. A great example is the hand of the second player. It says Call to the Fallen, Magic. What does it say? It says that you can search the discard pile for a hero card and add it to your hand. So you simply choose to use your action point, you read it out loud, you search the discard pile for a hero card, there's none right now, but if there were, you would be able to do it, and then you send the magic card face up on the discard pile. And that's it. Magic cards do not stay on your field. And again, the final card is the item card. This one says Wizard Mask. Items have a very special stipulation that they always must be played to a hero card. It can be one of your hero cards or one of the opponent's hero cards. This one says, the equipped hero card is considered a wizard instead of its original class. So you can actually change the class of the hero that you choose. Very interesting, but again, it must be played to a hero card. And all 3 of these action points, playing a hero, playing a magic, and playing an item card, all consume 1 point each. However, the second thing you can use that uses 1 action point is you get to draw a card. Let's say I don't like my hand. You know what? I already played one. I'm just going to go ahead and draw another card for my second action point of the turn. Ooh, I drew a fighter, nice. And you know what? I still don't like my hand. I'm going to draw another card for my third action point. And that's my turn. My 3 action points were play a hero from my hand, draw 1, draw 2. You don't draw cards automatically in this game. You must use action points to keep drawing cards. The third and final action that you can go ahead and use to spend 1 action point is roll to use a hero's effect. However, this one has a very special rule. You can only roll for each of your heroes once per turn. So because I already rolled for this one, let's say I didn't get it, I can't then spend another action point to roll again. However, let's say it was my next turn, and I went ahead and, I played this Mighty Blade card, I tried to roll for its effect, regardless if it worked or not, that's fine. But then I used my second action point that turn to then roll for this card. Because it's already face up, I get to roll for it. If you have multiple heroes, you get to roll each of them once per turn as long as you have enough action points. And that's basically how that part of the game keeps working. You get to keep playing cards on your field or items on your opponent's fields, and you get to keep drawing cards, and you get to keep rolling for your heroes to get some good effects. The goal of all this is to get a bunch of heroes on your board to try and win. But now let's talk about the second win condition. The second win condition is if you slay 3 monsters. Let me go and get one of these monsters as an example so you can see what a monster card looks like. The top is the name of it, then some artwork, and then you can see down here a couple things. The very first thing is their requirement. Now, in order to even attack a monster, you actually need to consume 2 action points. So once you consume 2 action points, you also have to look at the requirement. If you fulfill the requirement of heroes as well as the 2 action points consumed for that turn, you are able to attack a monster. Monsters have different requirements. For example, this one says 2 heroes. An H and an H is any hero in general. However, this one over here says it requires 1 archer and 1 hero, which means that it's a little bit more specific. As a quick heads up, any monster that indicates a specific class, your leader does actually work. So I would be able to attack this one here because I have my leader archer and 1 additional hero. However, the H for hero does not work for leaders, which means that if I wanted to attack this one this turn, I actually couldn't because I have 1 hero, but a leader. The reason for this is because a leader is a class, but it's not a hero, whereas a smaller card is both a class and a hero, so keep that in mind. Anyway, because I found out that I can actually attack this one and not the other one, let's go ahead and take this one instead because this one is actually legal. I use 2 action points and I fulfill the requirements. What do? Well, you roll to battle. It's that simple. Here it'll actually tell you, if you roll an 8 or higher, you get to slay this monster card. But if you roll a 4 or less, you have to discard 2 cards from your hand. If you roll anywhere in between, meaning in this case 5 to 7, nothing happens. You just ended up wasting your 2 action points, but you don't slay it and you don't discard 2. Let's go and do an example here. So I need an 8 or a higher to be able to get this monster card. I'm going to roll, and look at that. I actually ended up getting a 5 as well as a 3. Which means 8. So you know what that means? I get to put this monster in my area as well, right over here. There's 2 reasons why you want to have monsters. The first is the win condition. If you slay 3 monsters, once again, then you will actually be declared the winner of the game. However, for every monster card you get, you also get a bonus ability. That's a passive ability. This one down here says, each time you draw an item card, you may play it immediately. Nice! As a quick little heads up, if it ever says immediately, it means you get to do that without consuming an action point. So let's say in my future turn, I draw a card, and if it's an item, I get to play it immediately because of this card's effect on anyone I want to, and it's not going to consume an action point. It'll consume the action point for drawing a card, but not for playing it immediately. So to be honest, it's a pretty nice monster. I get to just keep it over here, and if I get 2 more monsters, I win the game. Lastly, with monster cards, if a monster ever gets slayed, you simply take the next top card, and then you flip it face up right there to replace the monster. Monsters are always going to be used, and you will not run out enough to a 6-player game. And that's about all the basics when it comes to playing the game. Either slay monster cards or build up your army of heroes, or both. And that's how you try to win the game. However, the very last thing I want to go over are 2 special types of cards. There are actually challenge cards as well as modifier cards. So let's go ahead and talk about each of these one at a time. Let's start with the modifier card. The modifier card essentially says that you get to play the card after any player, including you, rolls the dice. And then you get to choose if you want to add or subtract depending on what it says here. This modifier card says +2 or -2. So let's backtrack a little bit. When I got that 8 against this monster, let's say it was right here, and then that means this card was actually back this way. I roll an 8, but then this other player had a modifier, so they get to immediately say, actually I use this modifier to do -2. So you're actually at 6 instead of 8. That means that I wouldn't actually get the monster, unfortunately. However, there's no limit to how many modifiers you can use per roll, which means that if I had a modifier myself, which I actually don't, a little bit sad, but if I did have one, I can then counter that modifier by then adding 2 or 3 or even more. Once all players have finally finished deciding that they're not using any more modifier cards, you then take a look at the final die roll with all modifiers enhanced or downgraded or whatever, and you'll actually go ahead and see the final die result. And by the way, after everything has been used, all modifier cards are sent to the discard pile, face up as always. And the final card is the challenge card. The challenge card can be played towards any other player whenever they play a card from their hand specifically. What does that mean? That means that if a player plays a hero, item, or magic card, you get to challenge that card. You cannot challenge a challenge, and you cannot challenge a modifier. So when you challenge another card that another player plays, for example, let me go ahead and say that this player over here went ahead and played this Call to the Fallen magic card from their hand. They played it. So I can then go ahead and challenge that card, and when I challenge the card, it means that before the effect actually works and resolves, before we get to the effect, we're going to have a showdown of dice. So we both roll, and whoever had the highest number actually ends up winning. If the person who challenged ends up winning, then that means that the card that they challenge immediately gets sent to the discard pile face up and the effect does not work. If there's a tie, tie goes to the challenger, which means that the person who used the challenge card always has the advantage. And if you choose to use a modifier card, you can actually wait until all dice have been rolled. And then you can actually decide if you want to use a modifier or not. But yes, modifiers are allowed in challenges. If the person that was challenged, meaning this player who played this card, ends up winning, then the challenge card simply gets sent to the discard pile, and then the play actually keeps going, which means that in this case this card would then go ahead and resolve its effect. And there's one more rule that I want to go ahead and talk about, and that's the using 3 action points. I talked about all the different options for using 1 action point. I talked about slaying a monster, which is the only action that permits 2 action points. And then there's one action that requires all 3 action points, and that is, at any point in your turn when you still have your 3 action points available, you get to send all cards in your hand to the discard pile, and then you get to draw 5 new cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. However, if you do that, once again, that consumes 3 action points, which means that's the end of your turn immediately because you just used up all your action points. And that right there is how to play Here to Slay. As a quick reminder, you win by either slaying 3 monster cards or if you end your turn with 6 different classes in your party face up on your field. That's basically it. It's overall a pretty simple game. There is a fair amount of luck involved because of die rolls, but it's also pretty strategic with modifiers and challenges and knowing what card to play at the right situation. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and as always, I do encourage you to go and leave a like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you enjoyed the video. I'll see you all later. Bye-bye everyone. Have a great day.